Hi and welcome back to ConnorLikesTech. In my last video we managed to install Windows Server 2016 into VirtualBox, and in this video we're going to look at HyperV setup and what it actually means. So something I will go over before I start the video is you need to make sure the machine you're using is HyperV compatible. So I found this nifty little tool which I'll show you now very quickly before we get going. I've had trouble with getting HyperV working with inside VirtualBox. By all means try it. My computer does support virtualization technology, but unfortunately within Oracle VM it doesn't seem to work. If you guys do know a fix for that, please do let me know. It'd be fantastic to get it working with inside VirtualBox. However, I'll jump ahead and show you the little tool I found to test if your machine can actually support virtualization or not. So while diagnosing this fault the other day, I actually come across an application called Securable. Again, I will link that down in the description below. And this basically says your CPU specs basically. So it says, there's a little box here which says hardware virtualization, is it compatible, yes or no? And in this case, it says yes. So I know that my computer can support virtualization technology. Now, unfortunately, if it doesn't support virtualization, then unfortunately you cannot install Hyper-V on the machine you're currently working on. I would say most modern computers in the last couple of years do actually support it as default. However, just double check your settings. Sometimes people's BIOSes turn off the option for virtualization, so check your BIOS, stuff like that. But if you can and do support it, we'll jump right in. I'm going to quickly change to my Windows Server environment. As I said, VirtualBox doesn't work quickly, so I'll see you soon. So I've now moved over to my Windows Server 2016 test bench. So as explained before, as long as your device can support virtualization, you should be good to go. Obviously use that Securable app if you need to. But yeah, let's jump ahead and get this VirtualBox installed. Windows update. Right, so open up Server Manager. If you don't know where to find it, you can type in Server Manager down here and click on open it. So let's get ahead and start installing Hyper-V. So go ahead and click Manage in the top right hand corner and click Add Roles and Features. You'll then get this Before You Begin box. Go ahead and click Next. You want a role-based or feature-based installation. Next. And then you want to select where you want to install it. So I've only currently got one server, which I've named Virtual Host 01. So I'm going to go ahead and click Next. You then see this Roles tab. We'll be using this a lot over the next few videos, but basically for today, all we need to install is Hyper-V. Go ahead and click Add Features. Go ahead and click Next. Go ahead and click Next. Go ahead and click Next. I'm going to select my network interface. Go ahead and click Next. Don't want anything to do with that, so go ahead and click Next. Now, as a good practice, you really want to store your Hyper-V VHDs on a separate drive to your operating system. So for instance, if I have a virtual host in a live environment, I will have 2 disks dedicated to my C drive for my virtual host, and then I'll have another set of drives dedicated just to my virtual storage. So I'm going to go ahead and click Browse. I'm going to select this PC, and I know that I've got a drive installed here called Junk Drive and Games, whatever. I'm going to put it on C just for today because I don't have any additional space, but as a good practice, if this was a live environment, I wouldn't put it on my local C. Keep that the same and then go ahead and click Next. So obviously just bear in mind that if you're moving your location for your virtual hard disks, obviously put the virtual machine configs in the same location. And then go ahead and click Install. So in my case, it's actually restart pending. So before it'll finish its installation, it's going to go ahead and make me restart my machine. So I'll be back in 2 minutes time. So after restarting, you're now ready to go ahead and use Hyper-V. So you've got 2 options really. You can go ahead and click Tools in the top right corner here and click on Hyper-V. If you haven't got Server Manager open, you can click the Windows key, scroll down to Windows Administrative Tools and click on Hyper-V Manager. And here we go, this is your first look at Hyper-V Manager. I'll make it a little bit bigger quickly. So the first thing as always with Hyper-V Manager is to make sure you've got your settings right first. So in the top left corner here, sorry, you can connect to which Hyper-V server you've got. Obviously at the minute we've only got the one, it's the machine I'm on, Virtual Host 01. So I'm going to right click it and go ahead and click Hyper-V Settings. So on this page, you basically are defining the settings that you want all your virtual machines to use. So the first one is the default folder to store your virtual disks. As explained before, as a good practice, I would put them on a separate set of disks to my operating system, but because I've not got that functionality right now, I'm going to keep it on C, and the same applies for the config files. I don't have this setting installed, so I don't need to worry about it now. I don't need to worry about that either, or this, or that, or this, and we'll touch on replication in another video. And the last bit of settings to look at is just the input, so that's fine. Go ahead and click OK. So as you can see, I've already installed a virtual machine here, but I'm going to go ahead for this video and delete this and make a new one. Now remember, me deleting this virtual machine hasn't deleted its hard drive. So if I go to where I've set as the default location, which is on this machine in C, it saves it in program data, Microsoft, Windows, HyperV, and here it is. So within here you can see my virtual hard disk is here, and you can see the virtual machine configs have now been deleted because I've deleted the virtual machine. So I'm going to go ahead and just delete this. Gone. So now I've got a fresh canvas. I'm going to right click on my virtual host and create a new virtual machine. So if you've watched my installation of Windows on VirtualBox, you'll realise that choosing a name for the virtual machine doesn't actually matter. It's just a good reference point. Only you're ever going to see it. So I'm going to go ahead and call this ConnorLikesTech-DC. Again, you're going to pick where you want to store it. So I'm actually going to change it this time, and I'm going to keep it on C still because that's my only space I've got. But I'm going to make a new folder and call it Virtual Machines. Go ahead and select that folder. Generation 1 or Generation 2. Now, Generation 2 is the newer version, as you can probably guess. Generation 1 is used for different sorts of operating systems. For me, because I'm going to be installing Windows Server 2016, I know that Generation 2 is what I need. Then I'm going to set how much RAM I'm going to give it. So I'm going to give it 2048, which is 2 GB of RAM. I'm then going to select my internal network card, because that's the only one I've got on this machine. And then I'm going to go into creating my virtual hard disk file. So I'm going to make it 10 GB because that's all I need for today. The location is obviously where I've just created, C Virtual Machines, ConnorLikesTech DC, and go ahead and click Next. I'm actually going to select an ISO file now because I've got it to hand. Which is just here. And I'm going to go ahead and click Next and click Finish. Now don't panic if you don't have the ISO to hand right now. After you've created it, you can right click and go Settings. You can then go down to your SCSI controller again. If a DVD drive isn't selected, you can select it here, just click Add. And then choose the location of your ISO file, which for me is here. So again, as before, it's always good to check what settings you're giving your virtual machine before you boot it up. So I want it to start from the DVD drive first. That's correct because obviously I want to install Windows. So the processor, I'm going to give it 2 virtual processors. This so it doesn't run really slow. I find one processor on Windows servers runs absolutely horrendously. Obviously I've got the VHD file I've just made, that's 10 GB, and this is my DVD drive, and network adapters. So if you had multiple network cards, you could assign another card to it at this stage. Unfortunately, I've only got one NIC on my PC, so I'm going to select my local network card, the name of it, ConnorLikesTech DC, integration services. Now, it's up to you really what you do at this stage here. Shadow copies are fantastic. Heartbeat's useful as well. Data exchange is fine. Now, I often untick time synchronization. That's because I make my domain controller actually an NTP server. What that means in English is all of my internal computers and machines all look to my domain controller to get their time. That way it just keeps everything in check. If you keep this time synchronization check, it actually refers to the virtual host. Now, if you ever restart your virtual host and your BIOS times out, then it will actually throw off all your servers. So I untick this as just a good standard really. Checkpoints, we'll go over this in another video, but essentially this is just saying where you want to save your checkpoints to. Smart paging file location, again, completely down to you. I would always put it where I'm putting my VHDs, automatic startup and automatic stop. So if for whatever reason your virtual host restarts or turns off, once it comes back on again, what do you want this server to do? Now, because this is my domain controller, I like to always start it automatically. Now, again, it's down to preference. Some people like to do nothing with it so they can examine what's happened on the server first. But in this situation, I'm going to make it start up automatically. And when it stops, I'm going to make it save the virtual machine state or what it's currently doing. Go ahead and click apply and then click OK. At this stage, you should be able to right click and click connect. Or as before, double click. And then click the power in the top left hand corner. Press the key to boot from the CD. And there we go. Windows Server 2016 is now installing again. I'm not going to bore you all with installation details. You know how to do it by now. So I'll leave this running in the background while I show you a few other features about HyperV. So what I'll show you now is a few additional settings. So obviously when I created this virtual machine, I give it 10 gigabytes of hard drive space. Now unfortunately for Windows Server 2016, that's not enough space. So what if I wanted to make my hard drive bigger? What if I want my internal hard drive to expand essentially? It's very simple in HyperV. In a real world situation, you have to go get another hard drive or plug in a second hard drive. But with HyperV, because you're using one big storage, you can go ahead and click edit. So it's saying, what do you want to edit? Where is the virtual hard disk located? Now, it knows where it's located because obviously it's assigned to this ConnorLikesTech DC virtual machine. Go ahead and click next. And then it says, what do you want to do? Do you want to compact it to save space? Do you want to convert it to another file type? Or do you want to expand it? So in our situation, we want to expand it. Now, 15 gigabytes is plenty enough space to install Windows Server 2016. Obviously, if you want to install a lot of things on that server, I'll probably make it a bit bigger. But for now, because I know that'll work, I'm going to make it 15 gigabytes. Go ahead and click next. And it'll say it's going to expand it and it's going to be 15 gigabytes. Go ahead and click finish. Press OK. Connect to your machine. Power it on. Boot from CD. And at this stage, I can now install Windows Server 2016. So in terms of getting HyperV set up and working, you're pretty much done at this stage. That's the basics to HyperV. You've now got virtual machines. You can make as many as you want. Happy days. Now, a few other settings which you might like to see, which I find quite interesting. The HyperV Virtual Switch Manager. So if you go ahead and jump to here, so obviously I've selected my onboard NIC. Now that means that my servers can connect to my onboard LAN, if you like, my onboard NIC, and then go out to the web. Now, if I say wanted to make two test servers that were only talking to each other and had the same IP range, I could make an internal network. I could make a new virtual switch, click internal, call it internal or test or whatever you want to call it, internal, and then click OK. Now what this means is I could go to my settings on this virtual machine and change its current network adapter to my new internal range, and it means it won't get out to the real world. It won't get any further. We won't touch on it too much today on how these work, but essentially that's just a little basic overview of it. So I think that'll round up today's video. We've installed HyperV, we've looked at a few of the little settings, we've not gone too in depth with it, that's for future videos, but now we've got another Windows Server 2016 machine running inside our Windows Server. So at this stage we can go ahead and start making our first domain controller. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, give me a thumbs up. If you haven't, give me a thumbs down. And I've been ConnorLikesTech, and I'll see you all in the next video. Thank you all, bye bye.